if you don't know what you want and why you want it, what your purpose is and what's actually driving you, you're going to end up getting to that point where you create all the things you thought you wanted, but because you didn't know yourself or you weren't clear on what you actually wanted, that there's going to be kind of a missing feeling that'll be inside.
Yeah. And it's basically disillusion, disenchantment. You'll be disappointed. And at the end of the day, there'll be a life of regret. You know, Bronnie Ware, she wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she was a palliative care nurse I think in Australia. She worked only with people in their last 12 weeks of life, their last 12 weeks of life. And she worked with hundreds and hundreds, and if not thousands of these people. And she came to understand that there were 5 things that they regretted as they were taking their last breath on their deathbed. And the number one regret, Steven, is so incredible. The number one regret that people had is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life that was true to myself, not the life others wanted for me. And most of you listening right now, or some of you, or many of you, or maybe even you right now listening, you're living a life that someone else designed for you. It's not the life that you designed. Maybe, you know, your parents wanted you to go to a certain school, so you went to that school. And as a result, you met the person you married, and then that job opened up over there. Now, there's nothing that can't be unraveled. And things can work out and can work for your good, even if it was not what you ultimately probably would have been the best choice for you. But when you live a life by design instead of by default, you live a better life. Now, listen to the second biggest regret of those on their deathbed. Number one, I wish I had lived my life, figured out who I am and lived who I am, my purpose. And number 2, Steven, the number 2 regret of all is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And that's one of the big reasons I wrote 3 hours a day, because entrepreneurs have to know that there is an easier way to do business. Now, the last thing I want to say on that is, don't get the idea that, because there can be fear here where it's like, well, what if I discover that, you know, I like doing this, and then I'm totally going to go in some other field where I make no money. That's not really how it works. It's basically what people don't understand is you're confusing what you do with who you are. What you do is not who you are. And I've said this for years that, you know, I've been who I am authentically when I was in the music business, did that for 10 years, was very successful. I did it, and I started that company when I was 23. At 33, I got in the real estate business and was very successful, sold over 1,000 homes in my first 10 years, became the number 1 solo real estate agent in Austin, Texas, out of almost 10,000 agents. There was 9,800 when the Austin Business Journal came out with the report. And I was number 1 in the city. So I was very successful there. I got into the seminar business and very successful in that. And the reality is, I was still doing the same thing. If you put me in plumbing, selling plumbing parts, I'm going to be who I am doing that. So you can take who you are. What you do is just a conduit for who you are. Okay. So don't get the idea that you're going to have to switch professions or do something else. You might, but most likely, you know, unless you've made some really bad choices, you'll probably be able to kind of stay where you are and just sort of purpose your life. You know, we can get into how to do that as well, if, you know.
Yeah, I think we will, because I think it's really powerful. But what I'm really taking away, and what I hope that other people are hearing, is that once you get clear on who you are, right? And part of naming your number is actually getting clear on what you want from your life. What are your gifts? What you can do with those gifts. Then what you are able to then create in your life is a place where you're in so much better alignment. You know, I had a great coaching call with a client yesterday, and she was very successful. She was making a couple $100,000 a year, and yet she felt like she wasn't. And she felt like she was drawn towards doing more impact work. She enjoyed the volunteering that she was doing. And she had this belief that it was impossible for her to do impactful work and make money doing it.
Right.
And through the process of what always happens when you're coaching somebody is you have them realize that belief isn't true. And there's actually a bunch of other beliefs that could serve you even more.
Absolutely.
impactfully. And yet it also didn't mean that she needed to change her career in order to do more of that work.
That's
although
right.
it's an option that she had that she didn't even think was available.
Right.
And so what I'm curious for you, Knolly, is you're a guy who's been very intentional. You've created a life by design. Have you named your number, drawn that line in the sand about how much you need to earn in order to create the life you want? And more importantly than talking about the number, what did that do for you when you made that decision that this was the line? And what came from that? What focus came from that?
Yeah. So I've been teaching this for so long, and I actually call it a monthly nut. And this is a concept that I've been teaching for years and years and years. And I ask people, what's your monthly nut? Because, what you're talking about is, I'll give you an example. So when I was 45, I paid off my house. I was completely debt free. All other debt had already been paid, and I paid off my house. So I'm like, okay, I did it. I did, I'm yelling I'm debt free, and I'm all excited and everything. But then the bills kept coming in. So I said, wait a minute, there's residual bills. Maybe I need to create residual income. That's when I started to realize that, you can be debt free, which is great. It's a great space to be in. I love it. And also there's another level, which is what you teach, Steven, is like your name, your number. So my number, honestly, and I've made so much more than this, but 20,000 a month for me is comfort. Okay. I'm already there. It's residual. If I literally, I'm not going to do this, but if I go to Europe for 6 months or 7 months or 8 months, I've got that residual income coming in every single month, and I don't have to work for a living anymore. But now my new number is 40,000. I say, why not? 10,000 a week sounds better to me. And actually, I've been in a place where I was making 150,000 a month, but I had all these expenses. I had lots of overhead. I had 14 employees, 18 artists on my label. I was spending 160 with making 150. So having, so now my number's 40,000 a month. And so I'm working toward that number now. I don't need that much, but what I've always taught people is, if you can have your monthly nut covered, just your basic expenses, then all the other income that you create can go toward, your overhead. And I actually teach it in my book, how to do that. You have to create this is getting a little off track, but a lot of people don't realize that the money that you seek is all around you. For example, people sometimes when I'm coaching, they say, well, I can't afford that. I can't afford to hire someone. You tell me to delegate. I say, well, the better question is, how can I afford it? Not, I can't afford it. When you say I can't afford it, that's an affirmation that goes straight to your subconscious mind, and it continues to program and run in that program. Okay, we can't afford it. He says we can't afford this. So let's not even create, let's not create the ideas that will create the income. So to give an example, when I hire a VA, let's say I'm paying a VA in the Philippines $1,000 a month to do video editing. Let's just an example. So I do have a video editor that does video editing for me. And I have a group of entrepreneurs, and I went to them and I said, hey, would you like video editing? Because I don't need the guy full time. It's $300 a month. He'll do any video editing you want. And I got 5 people to sign up. That's $1,500 a month coming in. I'm paying him $1,000. So all of my video, and it takes him about 20% of his time to do the work for those 5. And the rest of the 80%, he can do all my stuff. So if you're creative and you can think of ways to not have to pay people out of your own pocket, or create an additional revenue stream for your VA or whoever you leverage, you just got to be smarter about the way you do it. But yeah, that's my monthly number.
Well, it's getting out of the box. And that's one of the things that's so powerful about your new book, 3 hours a day. Where can people find that? I know it just was released recently, Knolly.
It's actually in Barnes and Noble. I walked into Barnes and Noble in Austin and grabbed it. It's on Amazon. Kindle version just was released, and the Audible is coming out very, very soon as well. So it's, for me, I work 3 hours a day, but that's the ultimate. When you look at there's a lot of scientific studies that have been done. And when you look at even people that work like employees, the study has shown that their average productivity in a day is about 3 hours, even if they clock in 8 hours. We already know that if you give somebody 6 hours to do something, or 7 hours or 8 hours or 3 hours, they'll get it done. Okay. And there's a lot of experiments that have been done on that. And what I've come to discover is that 90% of what most entrepreneurs do, most of my coaching clients, whether they be a chiropractor, a real estate agent, dentist, doesn't matter. 90% of the things that they do in their company are not really moving the needle. The 10% of what they do is what moves the needle 90%. So I say, focus only on the 10%, or get yourself to a point where you can only have to focus on the 10%, and all the other stuff, putting out fires, navigating through the weeds, maintaining status quo, all that stuff will be done by others.
Thank you for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with a friend. Head over to theinvestormindset.com to join the Insider Club, where we share tools and strategies from the top investors and entrepreneurs on how to take it to the next level.